Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. We were at Applebee's of all places. Her choice. She barely looked up from her iPhone the whole night. Just kept scrolling, occasionally sipping her Diet Coke like she was on a solo lunch break, and I was the waiter that forgot her order. Then, right as the check landed, I made the mistake of reaching for her hand. Just a small gesture. A bridge. And that's when she said it. Loud enough for the waitress clearing the next table to hear. "You'll get intimacy when I feel like it." She didn't laugh. She didn't blink. Just looked back down at her phone like nothing happened. I didn't answer. I didn't flinch. I just sat back in that booth and felt something snap. Not loud, not messy. Just clean. Like a wire pulled too tight for too long. We rode home in silence. She turned on the radio, humming under her breath to some pop song while I stared out the window. Her sister, Maddie, was staying with us that week. Some soul reset, she called it. Post-breakup thing. Younger. Nicer. Still believed in people. When we walked in the door, my wife kicked off her shoes and said, "I'm heading upstairs. I'm exhausted." No kiss. No goodnight. And that's when I did it. I walked over to the hook by the door, grabbed my car keys, and without saying a word, turned to leave. Behind me, I heard Maddie's voice. Soft. Surprised. "Can I go with you?" I froze. Not because I was tempted, but because in her voice, there wasn't excitement. There was concern. Like she'd just witnessed something wrong, something unspoken but loud. I didn't respond. Just opened the door. She followed me anyway. We drove in silence at first. Streets empty. Suburbs quiet. I didn't know where I was going. Just somewhere that wasn't there. After a few blocks, she finally said, "I know it's not my place," but I heard what she said. "Back at the restaurant." That wasn't okay. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't agree, but because I was still processing the clarity. The realization that she hadn't just rejected me tonight. She'd been doing it for months. Slowly. Strategically. Like emotional erosion. This wasn't about one sentence. It was about every time she rolled her eyes when I asked about her day. Every time she dismissed affection like it was a chore. Every time she made me feel like an inconvenience in my own house. Maddie turned to look at me. "You're not crazy, you know. She treats you like you're some background noise." I still didn't answer. Because this wasn't the moment for words. It was the moment I decided I wasn't going to yell, beg, or ask for anything anymore. I wasn't going to raise my voice. I was going to raise my standards. And that night, in the glow of the dashboard, I realized something else. She thought I'd stay no matter what. She was wrong. The next morning, I left the house early. Not for work. Not for errands. Just to be away from the noise that wasn't loud but constant. The fake smiles, the passive-aggressive silence, the way she acted like proximity was the same thing as connection. She didn't text, didn't ask where I went. And that told me everything I needed to know. Back home, Maddie was in the kitchen, already dressed, pouring herself coffee from the pot I made. I used to make 2 cups every morning, one for me, one for my wife. Today, I didn't. Maddie asked if I wanted breakfast. I shook my head. She didn't push. But before I walked out, she said something that stopped me. "I've been here a week. I don't think I've seen her touch you once." I turned to her. Didn't answer. Just held her gaze for a beat too long. And then I left. By the time I came back that evening, my wife was on the couch, barefoot, hair wet from the shower, scrolling Amazon like nothing had changed. Maddie sat on the other side of the room, watching a show with the sound down low. My wife barely looked up. "You didn't tell me where you went," she said flatly. I hung up my jacket. Didn't realize I needed permission. She gave me a look, half annoyance, half confusion, then went back to her screen. I walked into the kitchen, found the fridge full of random leftovers, none of them mine. I heated something, ate in silence, standing at the counter. She didn't join me. Didn't ask if I was okay. Maddie passed through once, paused, opened her mouth like she was going to ask something, then thought better of it. But her eyes said everything. That night, in bed, my wife turned away from me, as usual. The same pose. The same cold space between us. I didn't say goodnight. Didn't reach for her like I used to. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, while she flicked through TikTok with the volume off. The glow of her screen lit the room. I used to hate that. Now it barely registered. Because I'd already checked out. And she hadn't even noticed. Not yet. But someone else had. Maddie was watching. Quietly. Closely. The way people do when they've seen something they can't unsee. She wasn't just my sister-in-law anymore. She was a witness. And I had a feeling that soon, she'd be forced to choose sides. 3 days passed like fog. No fights. No affection. Just empty routine. My wife continued acting like everything was fine, like silence meant stability. She'd wake up late, sip her Starbucks iced coffee, flip through her tablet while I quietly shaved, and packed a gym bag I never used before. That bag had become my escape, even if all I did was sit in the parking lot, thinking. Maddie noticed. Noticed I was up early. Noticed I ate alone. Noticed I barely looked at her sister unless necessary. One afternoon, while my wife was upstairs working, Maddie and I ended up in the kitchen at the same time. I was rinsing dishes. She was refilling her water bottle. No words at first. Just the hum of the fridge and the faint sound of my wife's laughter on a Zoom call. Too animated, too performative. Then Maddie said, "You're quieter than usual." I dried my hands, leaned against the counter. "I'm done making noise," I replied. She studied me. Done with her? I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. That silence said enough. She nodded slowly, like she understood something most people never admit out loud. That sometimes love doesn't die in explosions. It dies in the quiet, in cold breakfasts, in unanswered questions. I told her I used to plan trips in my head. Anniversary getaways. Little surprises. Even weekends where we could just disconnect from everything and reconnect with each other. But lately, I said, I plan exits. Quiet ones. I pack boxes in my mind. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I wasn't even sure why I was saying all this to her. But it came out like truth always does when it's been held in too long. Maddie didn't pity me. She just said, she doesn't see it. But I do. Neither of us noticed the footsteps on the stairs. We didn't realize she was there until her voice cut through the air. See what? She stood at the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, lips tight. No mascara, no makeup, no mask. I didn't flinch. I didn't scramble to explain. I just picked up the dish towel again and kept wiping the counter. Maddie backed off, mumbling something about going for a walk. My wife didn't say anything else. But I could feel it, that shift, that tightening of control, like she realized she was losing something and didn't know how to stop it. Later that night, she sat beside me on the couch. Too close, too forced. I moved slightly, enough for her to notice. Her shoulders tensed. She didn't say a word. She knew now. She just didn't know what was coming next. But I did, because I'd stopped asking her to stay, and started preparing to leave, with nothing but my silence and whatever self-respect I still had left. They say money doesn't talk, but in a marriage like ours, it did more than talk. It kept everything running, quietly, invisibly, like plumbing behind the walls. And I was the plumber. The groceries? My card. Streaming services? Mine. Credit points, gas, the Amazon Prime she loved like oxygen? All managed under my login. She never noticed, until I started pulling the plug. The first was the Hulu subscription. One night she sat down, ready to binge some shows she'd already seen twice. She tapped the remote. Then again. Error message. I watched from the kitchen. She frowned. Tapped again. Then pulled out her phone and logged into the app. Still nothing. Without looking up, she called out, "Hey, did you change the password or something?" I didn't answer. She tried again. Louder. Still nothing. She looked over her shoulder. Finally, and saw me standing there, drying a glass. Calm. Unbothered. That was the first crack. 2 days later, her Amazon auto orders stopped shipping. The collagen powder, the monthly makeup restock, that lavender candle she always kept burning on our nightstand. All delayed. Payment declined. She asked me if the card was acting up. I said it's probably just a setting she'd need to update. She didn't like that. Her tone shifted. Demanding. Suspicious. I just smiled and poured my coffee. Behind the scenes, I'd already rerouted my paycheck. Opened a new account. Quiet. Legal. Precise. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was just removing the fuel from a car that had driven over me for years. Maddie started noticing, too. She never said much, but she lingered more in the hallway when we passed. Her eyes met mine longer. Not in some flirtatious way, just something deeper. Recognition, maybe. The realization that I wasn't broken. I was becoming unreachable. My wife still hadn't figured it out. Not fully. She was too busy trying to reverse engineer whatever shift she sensed. Suddenly wearing that old hoodie she used to wear during our early days. Cooking again, just once. asking if I wanted to do something this weekend. I nodded. Didn't show up. And Maddie? She stopped defending her sister. One night, I came home late from the gym, sweat still drying on my shirt, and Maddie was at the kitchen table alone. She didn't ask where I'd been, just handed me a bottle of water and said, "You look lighter." Not physically, emotionally. And she was right. Because when you stop funding someone else's illusion, the silence you get in return is the loudest kind of peace. That night, my wife asked if I was mad at her. I shook my head, told her I wasn't anything. And I meant it. It wasn't me who told anyone. I didn't post cryptic quotes, didn't vent to friends, didn't call her family. I just kept showing up different, and people started noticing. The first was Natalie. She was my wife's friend, technically, but we'd all known each other for years. Dinners, game nights, those kinds of surface-deep friendships you maintain out of convenience. She stopped by one afternoon to drop off some stuff for a project they were doing. I happened to answer the door. She tilted her head, looked me up and down, then said, "You look different." I said nothing, just stepped aside to let her in. Later, I overheard her in the kitchen with my wife, voice just low enough to sound like concern wrapped in curiosity. "You okay? You and him seem off." My wife brushed it off, said I'd been moody lately, blamed work. Natalie didn't sound convinced. Later that night, my wife asked if I wanted to join her and Natalie for brunch that weekend, something she hadn't invited me to in over a year. I said I had plans, didn't explain, didn't offer alternatives. Let her sit in that. A few days later, a coworker I barely talked to at the gym pulled me aside, said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You're glowing, man. Glowing. That's what happens when you stop watering a dead garden and start growing roots somewhere else. In your mind, your body, your silence." At home, my wife tried to reassert herself, asked if I wanted to go visit her parents next weekend, something we hadn't done in months. I told her to go without me. She didn't argue, but her mouth tightened like she wanted to. Maddie noticed, too. She'd sit on the back porch some nights, hoodie pulled up, staring at nothing while her sister scrolled inside. She asked me once, without looking at me, "When did you know?" I said, "The second I stopped defending myself." That Sunday, my wife's mother called. She asked if everything was okay. She said my wife had been distant lately, short-tempered, that she seemed off. I told her everything was fine, because it was, just not for her daughter. And maybe, finally, people were starting to see that. I wasn't trying to ruin her reputation. I wasn't leaking secrets. But the space I'd created was pulling the mask off her faster than I ever could with words. She'd spent so long controlling the narrative. Now the silence was writing its own. And the worst part? It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was undeniable. The harder she tried to act like nothing had changed, the clearer it became to everyone that everything had. She hosted a brunch one Saturday, made pancakes from scratch, fresh berries, mimosa pitchers lined up like it was Easter morning. She invited 2 of her friends, both married, both the kind who used to gush over our relationship like it was some aspirational Pinterest board. I stayed upstairs. I could hear the laughter, but it was thinner now, performed. At one point, I heard one of them ask, "So, how's everything been? You two still doing those little weekend trips?" There was a pause. Then her voice. Too quick. Too bright. "Yeah, just busy lately. But we're great." Great. That word landed like a cracked mirror. When I came down to grab something from the garage, I passed through the kitchen. They went quiet for a second, then gave polite hellos. I nodded, grabbed my keys, and walked out. I didn't say a word. Didn't smile. Didn't stay. An hour later, Maddie texted me from upstairs. "They're gone. She's quiet now." That night, she didn't say anything. No summary of the day. No attempt at closeness. Just curled up on the couch with a blanket and a face mask, scrolling TikTok like it would explain how her performance had flopped. The next morning, Maddie came into the kitchen with her suitcase. I raised an eyebrow. She said, "Time to give you space." I asked if something had happened. She shook her head, but the look in her eyes said everything. She'd seen enough. She'd felt the tension harden into something unlivable. And more than that, she didn't want to be part of the cover anymore. When my wife saw Maddie's bags by the door, her expression cracked for the first time in weeks. Not anger, not sadness, just confusion. "Why are you leaving?" Maddie just said, "I think you know." No hug, no emotional farewell. She left with the same quiet dignity I had started to carry in my own steps. Later that night, I found my wife standing in the kitchen, staring at the fridge like it had wronged her. She asked if I had told Maddie to leave. I said no. And I hadn't. Because people don't need instructions to walk away from toxicity. They just need permission. And that permission had been given by the silence that had filled our house like a slow leak. The next few days were even quieter. No more guests. No more brunches. No more cover stories. And for the first time, she felt it. Not rejection. Not betrayal. But absence. Real, irreversible absence. The kind you can't fake your way out of. It started with her hovering. She'd linger in doorways, pacing the hallway like she had something to say, but couldn't find the words. I gave her nothing. No eye contact. No invitation. Just silence. Then came the knock. Not on the front door. On the bedroom one. Mine. I'd moved into the guest room a week prior. No fight. No announcement. I just stopped pretending that sharing a bed meant sharing anything real. She knocked once, twice, then pushed the door open. Her arms were crossed, but not defensively, nervously. Her voice was low, measured. We need to talk. I didn't look up from the notebook in my lap. She stepped inside. I don't know what's going on with you lately, she said. But this isn't working. Still, I said nothing. Her voice cracked a little. If something's wrong, just tell me. Tell her? After months of being dismissed, mocked, treated like a piece of background furniture, now she wanted words? I closed the notebook, stood up, walked past her, slow and silent. She stepped in front of me. Say something. I looked at her. For the first time in weeks, really looked. And all I saw was someone trying to reverse a storm she had spent years creating. But I didn't yell, didn't accuse, didn't explain. I just said, it's already been said. And I left the room. She followed me to the living room, standing by the armrest of the couch like a child who'd just been told there was no Santa. You're shutting me out. That part, she got right. She asked if I was seeing someone. I wasn't. She asked if I wanted a divorce. I didn't answer, because I wasn't ready to give her the headline she wanted. The emotional outburst. The drama she could retell to friends later. I wasn't playing that game. She eventually sat down across from me. Silent. I could feel the panic rising in her like heat from a stove. Slow, steady, undeniable. But I didn't reach for her. I didn't reassure her. I let her sit in the emptiness she had once called independence. And I watched her finally understand what that word really meant. Not freedom. Not empowerment. Just absence. The kind you can't fill with scented candles or motivational quotes. Just silence. And the worst part? She knew it wasn't going away this time. Because when a man stops arguing, it's not peace. It's a warning. The unraveling didn't come in one explosion. It came in pieces. Quietly. Like paint peeling off a wall you didn't notice was cracked. First, it was her job. She worked remotely, marketing for some boutique wellness brand that thrived on image and performance. She'd built her role around charm, control, and curated perfection. But lately, the cracks were visible through the screen. I heard her one morning, raising her voice on a call. She never did that before. Not professionally. Something about a missed deadline. A client complaint. She blamed the team. Said they weren't delivering. But her voice shook, because deep down, she knew the team wasn't the problem. She was. That same afternoon, I passed by her laptop as she stepped out to take a call. There were 3 emails open, none finished. All apologies. All typed, deleted, retyped again. Later, she slammed her phone down. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. The silence said it all. Then came her friends. Natalie stopped texting back. The other one, Brianna, unfollowed her on Instagram after my wife posted a picture from a dinner we didn't have. She captioned it, "Healing, together." I wasn't even in the photo. Eventually, even her mother stopped calling daily. I answered once when she wasn't home. Her mom asked if everything was okay. I said, "She's been distant. You should ask her directly." That's all I said. But it landed heavy. Next thing I knew, she was storming through the living room, phone in hand, cheeks flushed. Her mom had asked questions she didn't want to answer, and she knew exactly where the silence had started. Me. But I still hadn't said a word against her. Hadn't told anyone anything. I didn't need to. She was unraveling without help. And I was right there, but unreachable. That's what scared her most. Not that I was angry, but that I no longer needed anything from her. She tried to talk again that night. Came into the living room in that robe I used to compliment. Sat down beside me. Too close. Too slow. Said, "I miss how we used to be." I kept my eyes on the TV. Didn't even register what was on. I said, then you should have protected it. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She just sat there, breathing harder, like she was realizing that no amount of decor, no brunches, no filtered selfies could fix what she'd broken. Not because I left, but because I stopped showing up. Not physically, emotionally, spiritually. And that version of me, the one she once thought she'd always have, was already gone. I didn't leave in the middle of a fight. I didn't slam the door. I didn't pack in a rush. No, it was calmer than that. Colder. I started the morning like any other. Shaved, made coffee, checked emails. Then I opened the closet, pulled out the bags I'd stashed weeks earlier, and started folding clothes. Not everything, just the essentials. Enough to start a new chapter without making noise. She walked in around noon. Saw the bags. Froze. At first, she didn't say anything. Just stood there, one hand on the doorframe, like if she held it long enough, the whole scene would vanish. Then she whispered, "Where are you going?" I kept folding. T-shirts, socks, passport. She stepped closer. "You're leaving?" I nodded once. No anger. No dramatic speech. Because the explanation wasn't owed anymore. It had been offered for years, in every ignored request, every cold night, every, "I don't feel like it," tossed like it meant nothing. Now, she was the one asking for time, for clarity, for warmth. And I had none left to give. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. Not violently. Just, firmly. That was the moment she knew. This wasn't a tactic. This wasn't a bluff. This was it. "You're really doing this," she said. I zipped the bag, walked past her into the kitchen, grabbed the envelope I'd left on the counter. Inside, the lease to a small apartment across town. A separate checking account. A note with one sentence. "This isn't punishment. It's protection. For me." I left it there. She didn't follow me. Didn't cry. Didn't beg. I think she wanted to. But something about my silence made her realize the begging window had closed long before this moment. I walked out the front door. The same door I'd entered thousands of times. Hopeful, tired, frustrated, sometimes numb. Today, I wasn't numb. I was awake. And I wasn't running. I was releasing. By the time she texted, I was already gone. Not far, but far enough to breathe. She wrote, "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty. Out of finality. Because once a man learns to live without begging, he doesn't come back for closure. He becomes the closure. And I was already there. It had been 2 weeks. No texts from me. No calls. No signs of life beyond what I let her see. An online bank transfer, the official address change, the silence that followed. She reached out once more, around day 10. "Please," the message read. Just one conversation. No fighting. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry. Because peace doesn't negotiate. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, I came back. Just for one thing. Not closure. Not revenge. My grandfather's watch. It had been sitting in the drawer of the old desk in my former office. I'd forgotten it. I came when I knew she'd be home. I don't know why. Maybe part of me wanted her to see me like this. Alive. Detached. Untouchable. She opened the door slowly when she heard my key. Didn't say anything. I walked past her without a word, into the room that used to hold all my ambition, all my exhaustion, all my patience. I opened the drawer. Took the watch. Slipped it on. When I turned, she was standing there in a hoodie and sweatpants. Hair tied up. No performance this time. Just someone who had run out of roles to play. She didn't cry. Didn't scream. She just asked, "Was I really that bad?" I stopped in the doorway. I could have listed the late nights. The emotional neglect. The years of being treated like an afterthought. But I didn't. I just looked at her and said, "You weren't bad. You just stopped being good for me." She swallowed hard. I left the house. Closed the door behind me. Didn't look back. By the time she came back from Target the next evening, the garage was empty. My Ford F-150 was gone. So was my scent in the sheets. So was my name on the lease. The only thing left behind was a silence she couldn't control. Because I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. And that silence? It's not revenge. It's rebirth. The kind that doesn't announce itself. It just leaves you standing in a doorway, wondering how something so loud could leave without making a sound. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.